Blue Lock episode 12 has finally aired. This is the second to last week of the Blue Lock anime, so we do have a lot to cover. But of course, is this episode any good? Did the animation improve? What are the best and worst moments? And what is the community's reaction to this episode? There was a whole bunch this episode, so let's get into it. We immediately hop straight into Aiku's backstory as well as awakening we left off on the last episode. It's no doubt Aiku is the best player of the original U20, excluding Sai and Shido, so getting more of the captain's backstory is always nice. And these final episodes are really covering the best parts of the U20 match, so it's hyped to finally see them getting adapted. But we do have to address the big elephant in the room for this episode. Even though the story is good with Aiku, immediately you can tell that there's a difference in the animation again. Coming off of last week's high, this episode dimmed down the animation a lot. Aiku was just the start of the episode, but the PNGs and still frames are back even for him. Even though the visuals were nice for Aiku's awakening, there was a lot of still frames for this moment, and it was just in your face this entire time. Like, it'll just be Aiku talking, and then all of a sudden he's defending Rin. There wasn't really any movement unless it was the PNGs. That's the biggest thing about this episode, what everyone has been talking about. From start to finish, movement just felt very clunky. It didn't feel as fluid as the last episode. It was kind of like the first episodes of the season, lots of cuts to still frames and inner monologue, as well as CGI usage. PNG lock is kind of back, but honestly, I did expect this. I said in last video, I don't think it would get magically better somehow, especially considering the whole animation situation. It does suck because we're coming off of two really good episodes, and this is one of the final episodes, yet the animation just reverted back to what we've been seeing throughout the season. Remember, we're rating each episode by itself. An episode like last episode was good, and they deserve the credit for that episode only. But the things that made last episode good was just not present in this episode, so this episode was disappointing, at least in the animation department. And that's obviously the worst part of this episode. The animation kind of lacked at times, but there might be a really good reason for why the animation reverted back to PNGs for this episode, which we'll cover towards the end. Because we still have a lot of this episode left, and unfortunately, it's consistently like that for the whole episode, just a lot of still frames. Even for the biggest moment of this episode, the main point, what everyone has been talking about, Barou Shoei's goal even had a lackluster animation. Let's talk about this right now because this is what everyone's talking about, and rightfully so. Goals are supposed to be the most important parts of the show, and although this goal is hype, I don't disagree with that. I think they could have done so much more with it. There was some good moments like the OSTs, voice acting, and a lion aura done very well, but it does get outshined by the bad moments like the animation and still frames. Again, this goal is hype, but it felt lackluster in terms of impact because besides the kick itself, everything was just a still frame. Barou running into frame or sliding to actually kick the ball was a PNG where he just kept growing, and they also removed some frames from the manga like his eyes, close-ups at different angles. The thing about his goal is it didn't feel as impactful as it should have, especially compared to Shido's last two goals we got, where there was a lot of camera angles, fluid movement, impact frames. So that's why people are disappointed. When other goals got a lot of build-up or animation, this one didn't get that much love, especially the goal celebration. It just cut to him with his shirt off. It wasn't the worst goal, but it wasn't the best goal. It was kind of just mid. I think we've gotten way worse, but again, we can't really expect much. We already know how low the bar is gonna be. People are just frustrated though because of this adaptation. We'll talk about the community reaction and what they think in a second. We first have to cover the rest of the moments in this episode. We get Blue Lock defending and the U20 also going for its attack. It was just a lot of CGI usage and cuts, like I said. When Rayo marks Shido and Shido runs past him, we got the cardboard cutouts again. There was a few standout moments though, and we gotta give props when props are due. Gagamaru's block, I think, was a very good moment, even though it was a still frame. They don't show his body springing up, it was just a fancy cut, but the way they executed it, it made the block flow very nicely. When you compare it to other moments like when Isagi or Aiku does a play and there's 1,000 inner dialogues, it disrupts the flow, especially when they do the inner dialogue visual with all the floating bubble particles and it looks like we're in a fish tank. I understand they need to separate inner dialogue from outer dialogue, but I think there's a better way to do this so it doesn't disrupt the flow, which then makes people focus on the animation. Following this block though, Rayo's possession steal was absolutely amazing though. Copying Nagi and the visuals with the chameleon, I loved here. This was just executed so well. I'm glad they made it into his purple color, as well as made Rayo basically turn into Nagi. And the OST choices for both Rayo's possession steal and Gagamaru's block was very good. In fact, I think the OST choices for this whole episode was very good. I actually saw a lot of people talking about how the background music choice weren't that good for this episode, but I honestly have to disagree. I think it was one of the best things here because a lot of different players got their own unique OSTs, or we got returning OSTs, and it fit very well for these moments. For example, when Itoshi Sai goes up against Isagi, Sai actually got a final boss OST. Like, this guy cut off Isagi's song and started playing his own song. This was a huge moment, specifically Itoshi Sai and Isagi going up against each other. And again, the visuals and art were good per usual with Blue Lock Season 2. I really enjoyed Isagi quote-unquote drowning in the puzzle pieces. I think this was a nice touch, but it's just in your face with the animation when they're staring at a ball for 10 seconds sliding across the screen. You just can't ignore it. That's the thing. There is amazing content here. All of this is amazing content, from Aiku's awakening to Ryo's possession steal to Isagi versus Itoshi Sai. You can still get hyped watching it. However, the execution or delivery of it was just kind of disappointing. Anyways, with all of that out of the way, we can jump into the community reaction. What do people think of episode 12? And also talking about why there might have been an animation decline for this episode. Now, as you would expect with every single episode having the still frames and PNG animations, again, people are going to be very disappointed. And I think this time around, it was even worse. I saw a lot of people not even liking Barou's goal in general. I personally still think it was very hype because of the voice acting, OSTs, and the fact that it's Barou, but some people from start to finish just didn't like this goal. I partly think this was because of people's expectations getting raised from Shido's goal. Back to back, both of them delivered in terms of impact and visuals. And then obviously for Barou's goal, we don't have any of that, not even half of it. So it's obviously worse since we've seen what they can do. Remembering the goals that got justice, or even just a season 1 animation, it makes sense why people are frustrated. A lot of people were comparing this episode to episode 2, the infamous episode with a lot of PNGs, as well as the first U20 game episode where everything but Nagi's goal was straight still frames. However, I did see a lot of praise for Ryo's copy or the visuals for Isagi versus Sai, and I completely agree. These moments deserve the highlight because they were done so well. Again, giving credit when credit is due, but not ignoring what's in our faces. We have to cover it all. Anyways, even though there was a lot of still frames and overall animation flaws, there might be a good reason that a lot of people are forgetting. And that's the fact we're getting both episode 13 and 14 airing at the same time next week, which means they're making 2 episodes at once. One of the biggest problems for the season was the deadlines, and it's been confirmed by animators themselves, and I'd assume they're even shorter this time around due to releasing 2 episodes back to back. These are the final 2 episodes of the season, literally the end, so some people are saying the animation will be better for these ones since they didn't put as much effort into this episode specifically, and they're focusing on the last 2 episodes. However, in my opinion, as much as I want to be hopeful and I do think they'll deliver for the final moments of the match, they haven't had a really good track record with that. That's why I say it might be a good reason, because even though this episode feels way low effort compared to the rest, that doesn't necessarily mean that the next 2 episodes will be any better. For example, at the start of the season with the 3rd selection, when everyone all thought they were saving their time and budget for the U20, there was really no difference until Nagi and Shido's goals. So even though people are saying they spent more time on the last 2 episodes rather than this episode, it's still not confirmed, so we're gonna have to wait and see. We got 1 more week of the Blue Lock anime with the last 2 episodes, and if you've been along for the ride, I'd appreciate if you would hit that subscribe button. It's been a crazy ride, but thank you guys so much for showing up week by week. Just catching you up on episode 12 and everything you need to know. If you made it to the end though, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it as always, and I'll see y'all in the next one.